In this gentle journey you are Julius Caesar. The year is 91 BCE. The streets of Rome pulse with tension and ambition. You're a child in the Suburra, born to the name of an ancient house, but in a city where names are no longer enough. Around you swirl whispers of rebellion, glory, and power. The Republic is old, and the world it governs is shifting. And you're just beginning. If you enjoy stories like this, leave a like and let us know in the comments where in the world you're listening from and what time it is over there. We'd love to hear from you. Now close your eyes and let the city of Rome carry you. You're born into a name that once commanded greatness, Gaius Julius Caesar. The Iuli, ancient, patrician, proud. But when you open your eyes to the city of Rome, that name does not gild your cradle. It hangs in the air like faded silk, respected in theory but hollow in influence. Your family has the ancestry of kings and the blood of Venus, but not the coin or the votes to shape the world. Your father is a modest praetor. Your mother Aurelia is from the Aureli Cottae, sharp, disciplined iron in her spine. It is through her that you learn control, from her that you learn the value of silence. The Suburra district where you grow up is not what others imagine for a child of noble birth. It is cramped, alive, chaotic. Market stalls shout over each other. The scent of spices, sweat and smoke curls between tenement balconies. Donkeys clatter across worn stones. You share alleyways with the poor, the schemers, the soldiers on leave. And this too teaches you. You see how power speaks in different voices depending on where it stands. You listen more than you talk. You learn quickly that every gesture means something. A nod, a refusal, a step forward or away. Rome is a city of eyes, always watching, always measuring. As a child, you attend ceremonies with your family, draped in the white toga of your station. You watch senators pass like carved statues, their faces unreadable, their voices low. But you hear the whispers behind them, of growing unrest, of war in the provinces, of the names that will soon define the future. One of those names already runs through your blood, Gaius Marius, your uncle by marriage, a man of the plebs, a reformer, and a general who brought Rome to the edge of transformation. He breaks precedent, wins 7 consulships, defeats the invading Cimbri and Teutones. He is admired by the people, feared by the optimates, the aristocratic elite who clutch tradition like a shield. You hear his name with pride and with danger. When he visits your family, you watch the street from the window to see who sees him arrive. But shadows follow greatness. As you grow into your early teens, the balance in Rome shudders. The social war tears through Italy. Rome's allies demand the citizenship they have long been denied. In the Senate, voices clash. Reformers versus conservatives, visionaries versus the entrenched. And then Lucius Cornelius Sulla rises, a patrician general, brilliant, ruthless, and utterly committed to preserving the old order. He and Marius become locked in a spiral of power and vengeance. Civil war ignites. Proscriptions follow. Lists of men condemned without trial, hunted in the streets, their property seized, their names erased. Marius dies. Sulla returns from the east and takes Rome by force. The Republic is cracked, trembling beneath the feet of the very men sworn to protect it. And you, just a teenager, are thrust into the storm. You marry Cornelia, daughter of Cinna, a staunch Marian. It is not just a marriage of affection, it is a declaration. And Sulla notices. He demands you divorce her. You refuse. You do not shout. You do not grandstand. You simply refuse. And in that moment you become a threat. A boy with too much pride, too much lineage, too much loyalty to old enemies. Sulla has you stripped of inheritance, hunted. You flee, change clothing, cross rivers under moonlight, hide with family loyalists in the countryside. Malaria strikes you. You hover near death, but you do not bend. After months, Sulla relents. not out of mercy, but at the persuasion of others. In that boy, he's rumoured to have said, there are many Mariuses. It is not a compliment, it is a warning. And when you return to Rome, you are leaner, harder, sharper than before. You resume your studies. You take to rhetoric, standing in the forum and practicing against the wind and the crowd. You learn how to speak in a way that cuts and charms at once. You travel to Rhodes to study with Apollonius Molon, the greatest orator of the age. Your voice becomes your weapon, your mind your shield. But even on this island, far from Rome, you're never far from danger. Captured by Cilician pirates, you're held for ransom. They ask for 20 talents. You laugh. Insist they ask for 50. They are confused, but they comply. While captive, you treat them not as masters, but as future corpses. You lecture them, joke with them, write poetry they are forced to listen to. You promise that once freed, you will return to crucify them. And when the ransom is paid and you are released, you do exactly that. You find them, seize them, execute them, not with cruelty, but with precision. You understand the value of making a point. By the time you return to Rome for good, you are no longer the boy of the Subura. You are a veteran of experience, of politics, exile, capture, and resilience. You are elected military tribune, then quaestor. You serve in Hispania, where you see what empire looks like outside the marble glow of the Forum. You witness Roman rule in raw form, taxation, rebellion, brutality. And you realize something. The Republic is powerful, but fragile. Its traditions are not iron, they are habit, and habit can be broken. As you walk the dusty roads back toward Rome, promoted, respected, but still one of many, you pause beneath a statue of Alexander the Great. You're now 30 years old, and you remember that Alexander had conquered most of the known world by your age. You feel the weight of your own delay. You are Caesar, but not yet great. Not yet the name that will echo beyond the Tiber. Not yet, but soon. You return to Rome as a man who has seen the boundaries of the Republic from the outside. You have served in Hispania Ulteria as quaestor, helped manage taxation, spoken to tribal chieftains, and watched Roman soldiers build roads through mountains. You have worn the cloak of office and the armour of campaign, but Rome greets you with indifference, as it always does with men who have not yet taken the spotlight. There are other names that fill the Forum, men with armies, clients, gold. But you know that time, not titles, separates you from them. You've returned not just to serve, but to ascend. You begin with the courts. The law in Rome is not a matter of justice, but of theatre. You learn quickly that victory belongs not to the righteous, but to the persuasive. You prosecute corrupt governors, stand before juries made of men richer than the criminals, and you speak with the voice you trained in Rhodes. Calm, melodic, edged with conviction. You do not rant like the old plebeians, nor drone like the patricians. You speak like a man whose ambition is patient but absolute. You lose cases, but gain attention. Your name is whispered in the porticos. Senators begin to look twice when you walk past. You live modestly, but your debts are not modest. You borrow heavily, especially from Crassus, the richest man in Rome, the man who buys the properties of the condemned at auction and sells them for tenfold. He sees something in you. You're not yet a rival. You're an investment. With his backing, you run for Edile. You organise games, gladiator fights, public festivals that leave the crowds roaring and the treasury empty. You spend beyond reason, and it works. The people adore you. They see in you a patrician who honours the masses, who brings spectacle not for power but for pride. Behind your eyes, always, is calculation. You give the public what they crave, and in return you take what you need: visibility, loyalty, and leverage. You're elected Pontifex Maximus, chief priest of Rome, at a shockingly young age. The position is sacred, symbolic, and entirely political. You win against older, more established men. You move into the Domus Publica, the official residence of the high priest. Your opponents call it a scandal. You call it destiny. You walk the line between sacred and strategic, performing rituals for the gods by day and manoeuvring for votes by night. You are also elected praetor, and then propraetor, giving you command abroad once more. You return to Hispania, this time not as a subordinate, but as governor. You campaign against the local tribes, secure victories, gather plunder, and win the loyalty of your legions. But it is not the spoils or the marches that haunt you. It is the sight of a statue again, this time in Gades. Another monument to Alexander, again the reminder. He had conquered the world by your age. You have won praise and debt. You have worn wreaths, but not yet a crown. You request a triumph, the grand parade through Rome reserved for generals returning with victory. But the Senate hesitates. They remind you that to hold a triumph you must remain outside the city, and to run for consul you must enter the city in person. You cannot do both. It is a choice, glory or power. You choose power. You forgo the triumph. You enter Rome quietly and declare your candidacy for the highest office in the Republic. The consular elections of 60 BCE are vicious. Your opponents are well connected. The Optimates loathe you. But you understand something they do not. The value of coalition. You approach Crassus, who has wealth but no army. You approach Pompey, who has an army and victories in the east but no political finesse. You are the link. You forge an alliance that will reshape Rome. Historians will call it the First Triumvirate. With their support, you win the consulship alongside a staunch conservative, Bibulus. But Bibulus quickly becomes irrelevant. He retreats from the forum, claiming to watch the skies for omens, while you pass legislation with the support of the people and the muscle of Pompey's veterans. You push land reforms, ratify Pompey's settlements in the east, and refill Crassus's treasury with favourable contracts. You are not loved by the Senate, but you are obeyed. You keep the crowd on your side. You marry off your daughter Julia to Pompey, sealing the bond with blood. It is not a cold arrangement. Julia and Pompey grow genuinely fond of each other, but you never let family cloud your judgment. Every move is part of a larger pattern, and the next move is Gaul. At the end of your consulship, you secure a 5-year proconsular command in Cisalpine Gaul and Illyricum, soon extended to include Transalpine Gaul. It is a stroke of genius. The provinces are close to Rome, rich in potential, and filled with restive tribes. The Senate thinks you will fade into obscurity, but they do not understand you. You do not intend to govern, you intend to conquer. In Gaul, you become something else entirely, not just a politician or general, but a symbol. You face the Helvetii, a migrating tribe of tens of thousands. You block their path, defeat them, and send them retreating into the mountains. You fight the Germans under Ariovistus, who threatens Roman allies. You cross rivers, build bridges, fortify camps in record time. Your legions begin to move as one, trained, disciplined, efficient. You reward courage, punish disobedience, and speak to your men not as overlord but as comrade. They adore you. They chant your name. Over the next years you campaign relentlessly against the Belgi, the Nervi, the Eburones, the Veneti. You cross into Britannia, a first for any Roman commander. The invasions are brief, costly, symbolic. You return with intelligence, tribute, and the awe of myth. You cross the Rhine, building a bridge in 10 days to show Germanic tribes that no river protects them. You raise towns, negotiate alliances, accept surrenders. Your commentaries, your own published reports as distributed in Rome, written in clear dramatic prose. They paint you as brave, fair, strategic, invincible. You write them not for vanity, but for immortality. But with glory comes fear. The Senate watches your fame with unease. Pompey too begins to change. Julia dies in childbirth. The bond is broken. Crassus marches east to fight the Parthians and dies at Carrhae. The triumvirate is gone, only you and Pompey remain, and Pompey now leans toward the Senate, toward the Optimates, toward the very men you once defied together. You request to run for consul again, in absentia, while still holding your imperium. They refuse. They demand you disband your legions and return to Rome to face prosecution. You see the trap. You stand at the banks of the Rubicon River, a small stream but an enormous line. To cross it with your army is treason. To obey is political death. You look at the water. You do not hesitate long. You cross. The die is cast. You cross the Rubicon under the winter sky. The hooves of your cavalry stirring mist from the shallow stream. The banners of your legions trailing behind you like the threads of fate itself. The river is not wide. It is barely more than a ribbon of moving water. But the moment you step through it, the world changes. You're now an enemy of the state, a rebel general bearing arms against the Senate of Rome. And yet, as you look at the path ahead, you feel no fear. Only clarity. There was never another road. Rome has left you no choice. Behind you, prosecution, dishonour, perhaps exile. Ahead, the capital, the forum, a chance to remake everything. Your men do not question you. They have marched through Gaul under your command for nearly a decade. They have bled for your name. For many of them, Rome is no longer home. You are. They do not fight for senators and togas. They fight for the man who brought them across rivers, through snowstorms, into glory. As you advance, city after city opens its gates. There is no resistance. Many remember what you gave them as consul. Others remember your games, your grain, your words. Even now, without official title, you carry the weight of legitimacy. Pompey flees. He gathers what forces he can and retreats south, then sails to Greece. The Senate follows him, the Optimates clutching their scrolls and treasuries as they abandon the city they claim to protect. You do not pursue them immediately. Instead, you secure Italy. You are swift, practical, decisive. You take control of the grain supply. You control the treasury. You restore order to the streets. You show mercy to enemies who submit. You show speed to those who hesitate. Spain becomes your next focus. You move westward to defeat Pompey's legions stationed there. You do not fight battles you cannot win. You separate them, corner them, force surrender without unnecessary bloodshed. Then, when the west is secured, you turn east, toward Greece, toward Pompey. At Dyrrhachium, you face your first real test. Pompey has the advantage. More troops, better supply lines, the high ground. You maneuver with caution, build fortifications, attempt to surround him, but the battle breaks against you. Your troops falter. For the first time, your men retreat. You pull back, reorganize. You do not rage. You do not punish. You wait for your moment. It comes weeks later at Pharsalus. You meet Pompey in open battle. He commands more men, more cavalry, and the Senate watches eagerly from exile. But you know your army. You know your enemy. You deploy reserves in a hidden formation, anticipating Pompey's flank maneuver. When his cavalry charges, your men do not crumble. They counter. They rout the flank. You press the centre. The lines collapse. Victory is yours. Pompey flees again, this time to Egypt. You pursue. You arrive in Alexandria expecting a final confrontation, but instead you are met with a gift. Pompey's head, severed and presented by agents of the young pharaoh Ptolemy XIII. They believe they are doing you a favour, but you do not smile. You turn from the sight in silence. He was your rival, your son-in-law, your mirror in another life. His death, not by your hand, is a hollow triumph. In Alexandria, you are drawn into a civil war between Ptolemy XIII and his sister Cleopatra. She's unlike anyone you've ever met. Sharp, strategic, fluent in Greek and Egyptian, capable of turning a moment into theatre. You support her claim. War breaks out in the streets. You command Roman forces through the maze of Alexandria's alleys and courtyards. holding ground in the royal quarter until reinforcements arrive. Ptolemy drowns in the Nile as he tries to flee. Cleopatra becomes queen. You remain in Egypt for months, a time of political strategy and personal connection. She bears you a child, Caesarion. You do not bring him back to Rome, but his existence is no secret. Your enemies whisper. Your allies pretend not to hear. But your focus returns to unfinished business. Pharnaces of Pontus, son of Mithridates, has risen in the east. He tests the edges of your empire. You march to meet him. At the Battle of Zela, your forces crush his in a single swift engagement. You send the famous message back to Rome. Veni, vidi, vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. The phrase echoes through the marble halls of the Senate, through the streets of the Subura, through every alley and arch of the Republic. Yet rebellion continues. In North Africa, the remnants of Pompey's supporters gather. Cato, the immovable voice of the old Republic, leads them. You march again. At Thapsus, you defeat them decisively. Cato does not surrender. He takes his own life in Utica, choosing death over submission. You do not rejoice. You understand what his death means. The old ideals are gone. The Republic in its purest form exists now only in memory. You return to Rome, not as consul, not as proconsul, but as dictator. The title is given first for a short term, then for 10 years, eventually for life. You reorganize the calendar, introducing the Julian system that will define time for centuries. You expand the Senate, granting seats to men from Gaul, from Hispania, a move meant to stabilize, but seen as desecration by traditionalists. You forgive enemies, reward allies, pardon the sons of those who fought against you. You plan campaigns in the east, to conquer Parthia, to mirror Alexander's legacy. Statues rise in your image, temples honor your name, coins are minted bearing your likeness. The Republic has not fallen, but it has bent. Your opponents begin to murmur in darker corners. They speak of kingship, of tyranny, of betrayal. They recall Rome's earliest legends, Brutus, the ancestor who expelled the last king. And in the forum, you are offered a crown. You refuse it, but the gesture is seen and remembered. You do not fear them. You walk through Rome without a bodyguard. You believe in your strength, in your vision, in your invincibility. You dine with senators, laugh with rivals, shake hands with men who sharpen blades in secret. You believe you have remade the Republic. You do not see that it is already gone. You ride north from Rome not as a man in retreat, but as a man ascending through war. The year is 58 BCE, and the Senate has granted you proconsular command over Cisalpine Gaul, Illyricum, and now Transalpine Gaul as well. What they imagined was a political prize, a brief provincial stewardship to fade your star, becomes something else entirely. You see Gaul not as a province, but as a canvas, a proving ground, an opportunity to forge your own empire in miniature, to gather both glory and a hardened, loyal army that answers to no senate, no tradition, and no hesitation. You are 42 years old, still youthful in strength and keen in intellect, with decades of ambition compressed into every stride of your horse. The campaign begins with motion. The Helvetii, a migratory tribe of nearly 400,000 people, begin moving westward through Roman allied territory, seeking new land. Their movement is not an attack, but to you it is unacceptable. You intercept them near Bibracte. You offer negotiation, then reject it. You block their path. You force them to turn. In the battle that follows, your troops show the precision they learned in Spain, and from your constant drills. The Helvetii collapse. You chase the survivors down, force their return to their homeland, and restore the balance you alone now command. From there you turn to Ariovistus, a Germanic king who has inserted himself into Gallic affairs. He is bold, aggressive, dismissive of Roman power. He claims divine rights. But you do not recognize divinity in tribal warlords. You march across the Rhine's tributaries, engage him near Vesontio, and rout his forces with stunning speed. The Senate back in Rome learns of the battle not from scribes or envoys, but from your own words. You publish your commentary, plain, stark accounts of your campaigns. You write in the third person, distant but commanding. Caesar did this. Caesar marched here. Caesar spared them. You do not embellish. You do not boast. You simply tell, and in the telling you control the image of the man. You spend the winter building roads, fortifying camps, and learning the names of your enemies. The Gauls are many tribes, divided, proud, independent, but increasingly aware of you. Some submit, some ally, some conspire. In the spring, you act. You crush the Belgae in the north, sweeping through plains and forests. The Nervae resist with ferocity and cunning. At the river Sabes, they ambush your forces while they are encamped. For the first time in the Gallic campaigns, your legions nearly break. You're forced to lead from the front, sword in hand, reinforcements flowing from your rear columns. The battle turns. The Nervae are annihilated. Your losses are heavy, but your legend grows. You're not just the general who wins, you're the general who fights. As the seasons shift, your attention turns to the sea. The Veneti coastal tribes of Armorica control the trade routes of the Atlantic. They rebel, detain your emissaries, and build a fleet to challenge your advance. You respond by constructing a navy, not a temporary flotilla, but a proper force, crewed by allies, captained by men who learn quickly under your command. In the Gulf of Morbihan, your ships engage the Veneti in a slow, grueling battle. You cut the ropes of their sails, rendering them immobile. The sea becomes your field. The Veneti surrender. You execute their leaders, sell survivors into slavery. A warning written in waves and steel. But Gaul is not just battle, it is diplomacy. You learn the languages of the leaders. You meet them in open council. You offer peace to those who submit and relentless war to those who hesitate. You keep detailed records. You know the lineage of every chief, the rivalries between tribes, the betrayals buried in recent memory. You exploit them all. You're not only conquering territory, you're mastering complexity. In 55 BCE, you do the unthinkable. You build a bridge across the Rhine, not to chase a particular army, but to demonstrate that no boundary holds meaning to you. Your engineers construct it in 10 days. Heavy timbers driven into the riverbed span the turbulent water. You march across with your legions, stand on Germanic soil, wait, then withdraw. No conquest, no blood, just the message. Even this I can do. Then you turn to Britannia, the mysterious island to the northwest, rich in tin, cloaked in fog, ruled by painted warriors. No Roman army has ever set foot there, but you will. You assemble a fleet, cross the channel, and land on the shores. The natives resist, chariots scything across the beaches, slinging stones and arrows from hidden paths. The campaign is short, the weather foul. You withdraw. But you return the next year, with more ships, more men, more preparation. You advance inland, take hostages, gather knowledge. You do not seek to hold the island, only to show that you can reach it, that there are no edges to your reach. Back in Gaul, the storm brews. A unifying figure begins to rise, Vercingetorix, a chieftain of the Arverni, young, charismatic, disciplined. He understands what others did not, that only unity can resist you. He calls the tribes together, forms a coalition. For the first time, Gaul stands not as fragments, but as a nation. You march against him, and he retreats into scorched earth tactics. You follow through ash and famine. Your supply lines stretch. Your men grow thin. In response, you adapt. You burn less. You negotiate more. You allow winter campaigns. You live off the land. The decisive moment comes at Alesia. Vercingetorix retreats into the hilltop fortress with tens of thousands. You surround him, constructing a circumvallation wall. Then, when you learn of a relief army approaching, you build a second wall facing outward. 2 fortifications, one army inside, another approaching. You're the hinge between both. Your troops are exhausted, rations thin, but morale holds. You repel attacks from both sides, reinforce weak points, personally direct the lines. After days of siege and slaughter, Vercingetorix surrenders. He rides out in full armour, circles your camp, then dismounts, lays down his sword. You do not gloat. You take him in chains. He will be paraded in your future triumph. With Alesia, Gaul is yours. There are still skirmishes, still defiance, but the spine is broken. The Senate back in Rome grants you further terms, more time, but they fear you now more than ever. You have become not just a general but a political fact. Your legions adore you. Your victories have made you wealthy, powerful and popular beyond comparison. You govern Gaul as proconsul, but you rule it like a king. You appoint legates, oversee taxation, send reforms back to Rome by courier. You are far but never absent. You maintain influence in the city through allies, favours and threat. You watch as your enemies, Cato, Cicero, Pompey, shift positions, form alliances, try to contain your reach. But you are not containable. You have proven not just your strength, but your inevitability. When your term nears its end, the Senate orders you to disband your army and return to Rome as a private citizen. They offer safe passage. A trial awaits. They call it law. You call it sabotage. You negotiate through intermediaries. You offer compromise. You offer command reduction, even exile. But they refuse. They want you powerless. And so, you prepare. You gather your legions. You address them not with pomp, but with truth. You tell them that Rome has forgotten them, that their sacrifices are ignored, that they are not just soldiers, they are citizens who fought to defend the Republic while the Senate huddled in marble. They shout your name and they vow to follow. You begin the march south, and you do not look back. The night before you cross, the camp is quiet. Not with peace, but with pressure. The men know what is coming. They don't speak of it aloud, but it hangs in the air, thicker than the smoke from their fires, heavier than the mail on their shoulders. You walk the edge of the Rubicon with a cloak drawn tight against the cold. The stream gurgles softly beneath a waning moon. The same stream it has always been. Shallow, narrow, seemingly unimportant. But you understand what this river means. It is not a boundary of geography. It is a line of law. To cross it with an army is to declare war against the Republic, to forfeit the illusion that this is still politics. Rome has demanded your disarmament. They have ordered your return not as a hero, but as a criminal. They believe you will obey. They believe the law will stop you. But you do not serve law. You serve Rome itself. And it is the men who fear you who have turned law into weaponry. Your officers gather in your tent. They look at you not for instruction, but for confirmation. Labienus has already left, a man you trusted now with Pompey. You will lose more, but you will gain others. You sit at the centre of the room, quiet, letting their arguments bounce around you. Some urge caution, others demand haste, but none tell you what to do. They all know that this decision, this night, will outlive every other. You dismiss them just before dawn. Then you walk alone to the river's edge. The Rubicon murmurs over rocks, unbothered. And then, without pause, you step into the water. It is done. Your army crosses behind you in silence, first the scouts, then the legionnaires, then the pack animals, siege engineers, standard bearers and camp followers. The sun has not yet risen when the first column reaches the other side. There is no trumpet, no speech, only momentum. You move swiftly south. No one stands in your way. City after city opens its gates. Ariminum, Ancona, Iguvium. The local magistrates either flee or welcome you. The townspeople remember you from your consulship. They line the roads with cheers. To them, you're not a threat to the Republic. You are its embodiment, a man of action in a senate of delay, a man of victories rather than debates. Pompey is caught off guard. He has more troops on paper but fewer near. Most are in Spain or the eastern provinces. He and the Senate abandon Rome. They take the treasury, the archives, the sacred flame of Vesta, and flee to Brundisium, hoping to sail to Greece and regroup. You enter Rome without resistance. The city is eerily quiet, stripped of power, watching you with uncertain eyes. You do not loot, you do not punish. You take control of the state without declaring yourself dictator. You address the Senate members who remain. You assure them of safety. You promise no bloodshed, but you move with speed. Then you march to Spain. You do not chase Pompey across the Adriatic. Not yet. First, you must neutralize his legions in Hispania. You move with astonishing speed, covering miles in days, navigating mountain passes and rain-swollen rivers. At Ilerda, you meet the enemy in force. The terrain is difficult. Landslides interrupt your supply lines, but you persevere, adapting, seizing the high ground, and eventually starving them into surrender. You send the captured soldiers home. You do not execute. You do not imprison. You offer clemency, not from kindness, but from calculation. Every man who returns is a message. Caesar forgives. Caesar spares. Caesar wins without cruelty. You return to Rome only briefly. You are elected consul again. Then you turn to Greece. Pompey has regrouped with the Senate's exiles, allied kings and a powerful fleet. He waits for you with greater numbers, more cavalry and strategic advantage. Your initial attempt to cross the Adriatic is hampered by storms. Your ships scatter, but you push forward. You land in Epirus and advance toward Dyrrachium. The siege is long, difficult. Pompey has naval supply. You attempt to encircle him with a vast network of fortifications. Skirmishes erupt. Food runs low. Morale wavers. Then, during a breakout attempt, your lines buckle. You order a retreat. Disciplined, controlled, but the taste of defeat is sharp in your mouth. It is your first major setback. You regroup, resupply, and move inland. Pompey follows. At Pharsalus you make your stand. The morning is cool, the sky cloudless. Your forces are outnumbered nearly 2-1. Pompey commands the high ground and a deep reserve of cavalry. He's advised to wait, to let hunger weigh you down. But overconfidence undoes him. He lines his cavalry on his left flank, planning to sweep around and crush your line. You anticipate this. You place 6 cohorts, your best, hidden behind your own cavalry, prepared to counter. As Pompey's horsemen charge, your hidden troops lunge forward with pila and short swords, disrupting the advance and throwing the flanking maneuver into chaos. You then press the centre. Your legions, veterans of Gaul, Gaul hardened, Gaul sharpened, move forward with unflinching discipline. Pompey's men begin to falter. The line breaks. Your cavalry circles behind them. The rout becomes total. Thousands die. Thousands more surrender. Pompey flees. You do not chase immediately. You consolidate. You send messages to cities still wavering. You restore order. But the war is not over. Pompey flees to Egypt. You pursue. When you arrive in Alexandria, you're presented with his head, severed, delivered as tribute by the boy King Ptolemy XIII. It is meant to please you. It does not. You turn away, silent. This was not how the war was meant to end. Pompey was your rival, your son-in-law, once your ally. You would have defeated him, judged him. Now he is ash on a foreign beach. Egypt becomes a new entanglement. Cleopatra, Ptolemy's sister, emerges from the shadows, wrapped not just in beauty but in strategy. She becomes your ally, and more. Together you fight a civil war in the streets of Alexandria. Ptolemy's forces besiege the palace quarter. You hold out until reinforcements arrive. The war ends in the Nile, with Ptolemy's body found drifting, bloated and unclaimed. Cleopatra is crowned queen. You remain long enough to secure the transition and conceive a child, Caesarion. You do not declare him your heir, but the world knows. The gossip returns to Rome before you do. You move next to Pontus, where Pharnaces, the son of Mithridates, threatens Rome's influence. You defeat him at Zela in a single day. You send your famous report, Veni, Vidi, Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. Then you return west, where the remnants of the Senate's faction regroup in Africa. Cato is there, Metellus Scipio, Labienus. They rally Numidian forces, prepare for war. You land with a reorganized army, new recruits mixed with your veterans. At Thapsus, you crush them. Cato does not surrender. He dies by his own hand in Utica, defiant to the last. You do not mourn him, but in your quiet moments you understand what his death means. The Republic as it was is finished. Its defenders have vanished into the sand. You return to Rome for the final time. You are declared dictator for life. You wear the purple cloak of kingship, though you never take the title. You reform the calendar, aligning it with the sun, not the whims of augurs. You expand the Senate, giving seats to men from Gaul, from the provinces. You settle veterans, pardon enemies, build temples, plan libraries. You walk through the forum as a living god. Your face appears on coins. Statues rise in your image. The month of your birth is renamed Julius. The people cheer. The Senate endures. In name. But its soul belongs to you. And yet, you do not feel complete. You plan a campaign eastward, to Parthia, to avenge Crassus, to surpass Alexander. You dream of new roads, new legions, new boundaries to erase. But the city you have tamed begins to whisper again. Brutus, Cassius, Trebonius. They gather in secret, they smile in your presence, but their eyes betray them. They fear you, not for what you've done, but for what you might yet do. They call it tyranny, they call it patriotism. But it is fear, plain and pure. You dismiss the warnings, you walk openly, you trust that Rome would never strike down its greatest son. But Rome has no sons, only ambition and memory. You awaken before dawn on the 15th day of March. The light filtering through the shutters is soft, gold grey, the kind that seems to hold its breath. You are not well. Sleep has been thin. Your body feels heavy, not from age, but from a weight that is less physical than it's atmospheric. Calpurnia, your wife, has been troubled all night by dreams, images of blood, of statues weeping, of crowds screaming. She urges you not to go to the Senate today. She pleads, she begs, but you dismiss it gently. You're not a man who has ever ruled by fear. And besides, what could they do now? The Republic is yours, the state, the laws, the people, yours. You've given Rome order, grain, roads, peace, victory. You do not believe they would raise a hand against you now. Not here. Not in the city that cheers your name at every festival. You dress in your white toga, freshly laundered, trimmed in purple. You place the laurel crown upon your head, not to hide your thinning hair, but because it is expected. You're no longer simply Gaius Julius Caesar. You are Pontifex Maximus, consul, dictator in perpetuity, father of the fatherland, imperator. You have surpassed every title Rome could offer. The forum awaits. The Senate meets today at the theatre of Pompey, while the Curia is being restored. You find it fitting, perhaps. Pompey's theatre, built by the man you once chased across the Mediterranean, now your own stage. A servant arrives with word from a friend. Stay home. Another note is pressed into your palm. More warnings. You glance at them but do not stop walking. You have long since learned to step over rumours. If you paid heed to every whisper, you would never have crossed the Rubicon, never stood at Alesia, never laid eyes upon Alexandria. The streets outside are busy as always, but there is something different in the air, some quietness that makes no sound, only sensation. Your bodyguard follows at a distance. You dismiss them before the Senate entrance. You want to enter alone, as you always have, as if nothing can touch you. Inside, the theatre is already full. Senators rise as you enter. Some bow, others look away. You do not notice every face, but you know many of them. Brutus, Cassius, Decimus, Casca, Trebonius. You have known them for years, dined with them, pardoned them, promoted them. Some fought against you and were forgiven. Some rose through your favour. You walk between them slowly, casually. They part before you, forming a narrow corridor toward the dais where your curule chair awaits. Then you feel it. The first hand on your shoulder is not a greeting. The first prick of the blade does not strike the chest, but the neck. A sudden pressure, not yet pain. You spin. Another face. Familiar. Another strike. Then another. Steel flashes in torchlight. Togas twist and feet stumble on marble. You reach for someone. Brutus maybe, or Decimus, but more hands come. More daggers. They do not shout. They do not speak. They only stab. The wounds are not clean. They are panicked. Desperate. Shallow and deep at once. You fall to your knees beneath the statue of Pompey, the very man you defeated, now looming above you in silence as blood pools around the hem of your robe. You do not cry out. You do not plead. You are Julius Caesar. The men who surround you even now are the products of your rise. They were nothing before you made them something, and now they undo you not with armies or rhetoric, but with blades from behind. The final thrust comes without warning. You do not know who lands it. You have stopped counting. Your blood is warm on the marble. Your breath is shallow. The torches flicker. Your vision narrows. And then the silence deepens. Your eyes drift upward toward the painted ceiling. You think of Rome, not the city of bricks, but of marble. The city you try to leave behind and the one you hope to build. You do not know if they will preserve what you made. You do not know if the world will remember, but it will, because the world you shaped cannot forget you, because your name is no longer only yours, it is history's, it is empire, it is Rome itself, and as the Ides of March pass into dusk you are gone, but you are also everywhere, forever.